My wife secretly put our house in her name before filing for divorce. When I asked why, she smirked and said, "You never read anything you sign anyway." I paused, looked her dead in the eyes, and replied, "Good thing I installed cameras before signing that too." Her lawyer's face dropped the moment I played the footage. "My name's Colby. I'm 48, been in Boulder, Colorado my entire life. The kind of place that smells like pine and coffee in the morning, where winters bite hard but the skies make up for it. I've made a modest but comfortable living as a home inspector. Nothing fancy, but honest work. Roofs, foundations, plumbing, electrical. I've crawled through enough basements and attics to know the bones of a place before most people even step inside. Life never hit me with anything too wild, at least not until recently. I married young. Well, relatively speaking. I was 30, she was 27. Taryn. She walked into my life like she had a plan for it before I even knew what was happening. Met her at a real estate convention downtown. I was attending out of obligation. She was working a booth for a mortgage company, dressed like a high-end banker, talking with the confidence of someone who'd already closed 3 deals that morning. She smiled at me once across the hall, and I knew I was in trouble. She was sharp, quick-witted, numbers-driven, organized to a fault. She talked about spreadsheets the way people talk about novels. I was drawn in. Where I was easygoing, she was precise. Where I liked to take my time, she had a calendar blocked by the hour. We moved in together 6 months after our first date and got married a year later. Everyone said we moved fast, but when something feels steady, you don't think to question it. Not until the cracks start forming. At first, I didn't notice them. Or maybe I didn't want to. She handled the bills. She wanted control over the finances early on, said it made her feel secure, and I had no reason to argue. I trusted her. God, did I trust her? Looking back now, I can't decide if I was blind or if she was just that good at hiding things. For most of our marriage, we lived in the same 2-story home I bought right before we got engaged. A little north of Chautauqua Park, great view of the Flatirons, quiet neighbors, even a fireplace that actually worked. It was my dream house. I'd put the down payment together from years of saving, crawling under old Victorian houses in the winter, hauling gear around in the summer, weekends spent working while everyone else was on a hike or sipping beers on Pearl Street. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine, and I thought it was ours. The real unraveling started subtly. Late nights, long weekends, seminars in Denver she didn't attend. She always had a story, and I always took her word for it. Until the day she stopped coming home after one of those work trips and didn't call until noon the next day. Said her phone died. I bought that too. It's strange how silence builds tension. No big blow-ups. No fights thrown across the room. Just distance. Invisible, slow-moving distance. I'd sit in the kitchen at night, watching her stir pasta or scroll through her emails, and feel like I didn't know the woman 10 feet away from me. She stopped asking about my day. Stopped commenting on the houses I inspected or the weird things I found during work. Even the jokes she used to make about my house graveyard photo collection, gone. She was somewhere else, mentally. Like she'd already packed up and moved on. Then came the papers. Not a fight. Not a conversation. Just a knock on the door at 7:45 a.m. on a Tuesday and a manila envelope shoved into my hand. Divorce. She wasn't even home. I opened it like it was a damn utility bill. My hands shook the whole time. That night, she came home like nothing had happened. Put her purse down, slipped her shoes off, and said, "I figured this would be easier." Easier. I finally choked out. She didn't even look up from untying her hair. It's cleaner this way. Cleaner. Like ending an 18-year marriage was some sort of dental procedure. It got worse. The next week, I found out the house I paid for, maintained, repaired, lived in, was legally in her name now. She'd done it behind my back. Quietly, efficiently, just like she handled everything else. I didn't understand how until my lawyer pointed it out. She had me sign a few documents months prior, saying it was for refinancing. She'd even scribbled notes on sticky tabs to guide me through where to sign. I didn't read them. Of course I didn't. We were married. Why would I? The day I confronted her, she smiled like it was a joke only she understood. "You never read anything you sign anyway," she said, her voice soft and unbothered. The silence after that was louder than any yelling I could have mustered. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. I stood there, trying to find breath, trying to understand how someone I shared half my life with could be this calculating. She didn't just want out. She wanted everything. Clean, quiet, clinical. But I wasn't going to just lie down and lose everything. Not this time. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd started having suspicions. Subtle things, details out of place, her stories not lining up. I'd been burnt before in business, so a long time ago I had cameras installed in my home office. Not out of paranoia, but habit. I never needed them, until now. One night, when she was out, I reviewed the footage. And there it was. Clear as day. Taryn switched the documents on my desk while I was in the kitchen. You could even hear her on the phone, rehearsing with someone, probably her brother. He was a lawyer too. She removed the originals and replaced them with entirely different ones. The ones I eventually signed, without a second glance. That video was gold. I brought it to mediation, played it in front of her, her lawyer, and mine. No yelling, no gloating, just the sound of silence thick enough to cut with a blade. Her lawyer looked pale. Taryn looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. My lawyer moved fast. Motions were filed. Investigations opened. Turns out, Taryn had funneled over $70,000 from our joint accounts into a private one in her maiden name. She'd already put a down payment on a loft in Lodo, Denver, where apparently she planned to restart her life without me. The fallout wasn't just financial, it was emotional carnage. Friends chose sides. Family pulled away. My parents, who adored her, were devastated. Her parents didn't even reach out. It was like we were all collateral in some long-planned exit strategy. I spent days holed up in the guest room just staring at old photos. Us smiling at the Grand Canyon. Her laughing at a ski lodge in Breckenridge. Our anniversary dinner in Telluride. I couldn't tell what had been real and what was just part of her script. And yet, even in all that betrayal, there was this strange numbness. Like a fog that wouldn't lift. I kept showing up to work, climbing into crawl spaces, reporting on cracked drywall, while my own life was caving in. The days after that mediation meeting passed in a haze. You'd think having proof, evidence on tape, would give you a sense of relief. Some moral high ground. But it didn't. It just made everything heavier. I was still living in the same house. Our house. But now it felt like a museum of a life that was falling apart in slow motion. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway. Her sweaters were still on the closet hangers. The fridge had almond milk and that fancy goat cheese she liked, untouched. It was like she'd vanished and left her skin behind. Taryn moved in with a friend, temporarily, she said. Gave me space. Truth was, she didn't want to look me in the eye anymore. Couldn't. I think the video rattled her in a way she hadn't anticipated. She built her identity around being one step ahead, always the most prepared person in the room. And now, with that one flash drive, she'd lost the upper hand. But that didn't stop the legal side from dragging its feet. Court systems don't care about your emotional trauma. They want paperwork, hearings, deadlines. So while the attorneys did their dance, I kept living in the waiting room of my own life. I went back to work. Tried to, anyway. Climbing under a house in Longmont one morning, I smacked my head so hard on a steel beam I had to sit in the dirt for 15 minutes just to stop seeing stars. A little blood, a lot of swearing. But mostly, I remember just sitting there, in the dust, thinking, how the hell did I get here? It was like that a lot. Moments that should have felt like nothing suddenly felt like everything. I'd catch a whiff of her lotion on a coat, and it'd stop me in my tracks. I'd see a couple holding hands at a diner, and feel this ache I didn't know what to do with. I started avoiding places we used to go. Couldn't walk into our favorite brunch spot without remembering her laughing at that time I spilled syrup all over my jeans. Couldn't go to the Boulder Farmers Market without hearing her voice over my shoulder, comparing the price of heirloom tomatoes. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the erasure. The rewriting of 18 years like they were just a prologue to her real life, the one she planned behind closed doors. I finally sat down with my accountant after all the money stuff came to light. The guy's name was Roland, mid-60s, blunt, wore the same navy blazer every time I saw him. He laid it out straight. She was moving funds for at least a year, he said, tapping the spreadsheet. Small enough amounts at first not to trigger flags. But steadily and deliberately, she knew what she was doing. The timeline made me sick. A year. That meant while we were still celebrating anniversaries, hosting barbecues, buying Christmas gifts together, she was already pulling away. Financially, emotionally, legally. I remembered the way she looked at me that last Christmas. Soft, distracted, distant. I chalked it up to stress at the time. A heavy workload. Maybe a rough patch. But no, it wasn't that. She was already gone. The smile had been a shell. People started reaching out, some out of sympathy, others because gossip spreads fast. A couple of our mutual friends tried to stay neutral, but neutrality has a shelf life in situations like this. Eventually, everyone picks a side, whether they mean to or not. Her friend Allison messaged me out of the blue one night. Just a single line. You didn't deserve this. I didn't respond. What could I say? My own brother, Owen, came over one night with a six-pack and just sat with me on the back porch. She's cold, man, he said finally, cracking a beer. Always has been. I didn't say anything. Because the thing was, I didn't always think that. Taryn used to be warm. Or she pretended so well I never knew the difference. Either way, I mourned a version of her that maybe never existed. And then, the weirdest thing happened. She tried to come back. Not romantically. That ship had sunk and taken the life jackets with it. But after the mediation turned against her, and her lawyer quit. Yep, quit. She started emailing me. Nothing direct. Just vague questions about tax documents. Property paperwork. The dog she never wanted, but now suddenly missed. I didn't respond for a while. Let the emails pile up like junk mail. But then came the message that stopped me. You win. Is that what you wanted? Win. That word pissed me off more than anything else in the entire ordeal. Like this had been a game. Like she was keeping score while I was just trying to survive. I didn't reply to that one either. Instead, I focused on protecting what was left. My house. My name. My peace. I hired a new lawyer, an older woman named Lee who had the kind of voice that made you sit up straighter. She didn't coddle. She said things like, let's finish this before she finds new leverage, and don't assume she's done playing dirty. We combed through every document, every transfer, every account. I gave up weekends and evenings for it. Dug through boxes of old receipts and tax returns. I'd never felt so invaded in my own life, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't letting her walk away clean. And during all this, the house started to feel more like mine again. I replaced the rugs, took down the photos, repainted the office she used to work in. It wasn't therapeutic, it was surgical. A slow, painful cutting away of everything that still looked like us. Sometimes I'd sit on the back steps with my coffee and just listen to the wind cut through the pine trees. No TV, no music, no phone, just silence and breath. I'd think about the years I gave to someone who saw me as disposable. And then I'd remind myself, I'm still here. The court date got pushed. Twice. Taryn's new lawyer asked for continuances, more time to review discovery. I knew what that meant. Delay, stall, drag it out until I broke. But I didn't break. I got quieter, harder, more focused. And then, well, what happened next changed everything again. It was a Thursday afternoon, cold enough that my truck took a few extra cranks to turn over. I was heading back from a job in Netherlands, a nice older couple wanting to sell their cabin, worried about mold in the crawl space. They offered me coffee and a slice of banana bread while I waited for my report to upload. Sometimes I get moments like that, soft, human reminders that not everyone out there was playing games. As I pulled back into my driveway, I noticed something odd. A car I didn't recognize parked across the street, engine idling. Woman inside, mid-30s maybe, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. I didn't think much of it until she rolled down her window as I walked toward my front door. Are you Colby? I stopped, cautious. Yeah, you are. She hesitated, like she was calculating how much of herself to reveal. Then she reached into the passenger seat and held up an envelope. I didn't know how else to do this. That's never a good start. She didn't get out, just handed me the envelope and said, I'm sorry, before pulling off down the street. No plate I could make out. No name. I stood there a minute before walking inside, envelope clenched in my hand. It was heavy, more than a letter. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd signed those fake documents months ago, and opened it. Inside were photos. A stack of them. And not the kind you'd keep in a family album. Taryn. With another man. Over and over, in different locations. Some recent. Some dating back years. I felt the blood drain from my face. There was one of them at a hotel I recognized. It was in Denver, near the convention center. Another of them on a beach somewhere, definitely not Colorado. They were kissing, holding hands, sitting close in ways you don't sit unless there's more than just friendship. I didn't count the photos. I just stared at them, one by one, until I couldn't anymore. Tucked into the bottom of the stack was a note, handwritten. You deserve to know. She's been lying for years. I thought she would end it when she married you. She didn't. I left him 2 months ago. No name. Just that. I sat there for a long time, trying to piece together the timeline. This wasn't just someone she met after the divorce started. No, the man in those photos had been around for years. You could tell by the way she looked at him in those pictures. Relaxed, almost smug. Like she was right where she wanted to be. Like everything else was just background noise. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. What I felt was colder than that. Like a slow, suffocating freeze spreading across my chest. I thought back to all those business trips, those last-minute overnights, the vacations she couldn't get time off for. I remembered going alone to my niece's wedding because she said she had a conference. I remembered the time I surprised her at her office on our anniversary with lunch, and she was in a meeting. God, I was such a damn fool. The betrayal of the house, the finances, the manipulation, that was one kind of pain. But this was different. This was personal, intimate. This meant she'd been with 2 people for years. The woman I made breakfast for and the woman in those photos, tangled up with someone else in some hotel bed I'd never seen. I couldn't sleep that night. I just paced the hallways of my house, barefoot, mind spinning. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a memory I didn't want. I ended up on the couch, wrapped in an old quilt my mom made, staring at the ceiling. The next day, I dropped the photos on my lawyer's desk. She glanced through them slowly, lips pressed tight. Well, she said, finally looking up. This changes a few things. That was an understatement. Adultery didn't carry the same legal weight it used to, but in our case, with her already caught forging signatures and hiding money, it painted a very clear picture of intent. Taryn wasn't leaving because we grew apart. She was building a whole new life. Methodically, with someone else. And she wanted to take me down as she walked out the door. I didn't respond to her next 3 emails. She noticed. The tone shifted. She started getting impatient. Less calculated. One message actually said, "You're not being fair, Colby." I laughed out loud when I read that. Fair. I'd spent years giving her everything. Space, trust, loyalty. And she'd spent those same years stripping my life for parts while playing house with someone on the side. A few days later, I ran into her at the grocery store. We hadn't seen each other face to face since the mediation. She was in the wine aisle, holding a bottle of that overpriced Sauvignon Blanc she always claimed was too citrusy. Her hair was tied back, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She froze when she saw me. I didn't say a word, just walked past her with a nod. She followed me to the checkout. "Colby," she said, quiet, urgent. "Can we just talk?" I turned, stared at her for a beat too long. "Talk. Now." "I didn't mean for it to go this way," she said. I didn't respond, just watched her, waiting to see if she'd be honest. She looked down. "I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" My voice cracked in a way I hated. "You engineered this." She opened her mouth, then shut it. "I'm sorry," she said. Too late. I walked out without another word. Outside, the air hit my lungs like ice water. I stood in the parking lot, watching the foothills in the distance blur in the low winter fog. There was a time she and I hiked those trails every weekend, laughing over granola bars, dreaming out loud about building a cabin up there someday. Now, I couldn't look at the mountains without tasting bitterness. But I didn't spiral. Not this time. That night, I called my brother. We drank on the porch again, this time without saying much at all. Just sat in the cold and let the silence hold us up. I've got more to tell you. How the divorce took its final turn, how her carefully planned narrative finally broke down in public view, how I started rebuilding brick by brick. But you said not to end it yet, so I'll stop here. A few weeks after that run-in at the grocery store, my lawyer, Lee, told me we had a court date. Final hearing. No more delays. Taryn had run out of tricks. Her new attorney wasn't as slippery as the first one, and with the video footage, the financial evidence, and the stack of photos from that envelope, we had her boxed in. The night before court, I stood in the living room, just looking around. There were patches on the wall from where I'd filled old nail holes. A new coffee table, a different couch. No sign of her anywhere. It didn't feel like the place we built together anymore. It felt like mine. For the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. The morning of the hearing, I dressed simple. Button down. Slacks. No tie. I wanted to be comfortable. Confidence. Real. Lee met me outside the Boulder County Courthouse, steaming cup of tea in hand. She patted my shoulder like a coach before a game. "She'll try to push sympathy," she said. "Don't let her get in your head." "I'm past that," I said. And I meant it. Inside the courtroom, Taryn looked tired. Thinner. Still composed, but the cracks showed. She avoided my eyes. Her lawyer whispered something to her, and she nodded without emotion. The judge, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense, asked us both to speak briefly. Taryn went first. Her speech was practiced, full of phrases like emotional disconnect, communication breakdown, and mutual drift. No mention of the forgery, the secret lover, the money, just cold detachment dressed up as maturity. Then it was my turn. I stood up, took a breath. "I believed in our marriage," I said, voice steady. "I gave it everything I had. I trusted her, right up until the day she handed me divorce papers like a receipt from a gas station." The judge blinked, then nodded. "And when I found out she'd forged my signature to steal the house I bought before we even got married, when I found out she'd been funneling money out of our accounts and lying about where she was for years, it wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. It was manipulation. It was calculated." I didn't look at Taryn as I spoke. I looked at the judge, at my lawyer, at the court clerk, anyone but her. "And I have proof," I continued. "Footage of the forgery, bank records of the transfers, and photos, dozens, that show she was in a relationship with another man while married to me. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a setup. I was her exit strategy." Silence in the room. The judge leaned forward. "You have all of this documented?" "Yes, Your Honor." Lee handed over the binder. The judge flipped through it quietly for a few moments. Taryn shifted in her seat. I could see the panic starting to build behind her eyes. In the end, it wasn't a dramatic ruling. It wasn't a thunderclap. It was something far more satisfying. Taryn was ordered to return full ownership of the house to me. Her financial actions were ruled deceptive and premeditated, which meant the court awarded me an additional settlement to cover not just what she'd taken, but damages. Her attempt to hide funds backfired. She had to pay court costs, legal fees, and part of the settlement came straight out of the account she'd tried to keep secret. She lost the house, the money, and the narrative. The judge even added a note of caution to her final statement. "Mrs. Avery," she said. Taryn had gone back to her maiden name. "You're fortunate that the opposing party pursued justice through the court and not criminal charges. That footage, alone, could have gone a very different route." Taryn didn't respond. Her eyes stayed fixed on the table in front of her. As we left the courthouse, Lee turned to me and smiled. "Not bad for a home inspector." I let out a slow breath. Not bad at all. The revenge wasn't about winning a court case. It was about clarity, about every lie she told crumbling under the weight of proof. It was about walking out of that courtroom with my name intact, my house back, and the satisfaction of knowing that she had to sit there and watch her web fall apart in real time. I kept the footage, the photos. I didn't show them around. That wasn't my style. But they stayed locked in a drawer as a reminder. Trust is sacred. And next time, I'll read every damn thing I sign. Months passed. I started rebuilding, piece by piece. Weekends became mine again. I went fishing with Owen, reconnected with old friends, even went on a couple of dates. Nothing serious, just human interaction without the weight of history. The house felt different now. Not haunted, just reclaimed. I repainted the bedroom, got rid of every trace of the life we used to share, replaced it with something quieter, simpler, more real. Started learning to cook properly. Nothing fancy, but enough to survive on more than grilled cheese and frozen burritos. One night, I stood out on the back porch, beer in hand, staring up at the stars above the flatirons. That same porch where I used to sit wondering what the hell went wrong. Now, I don't wonder anymore. I knew. And the satisfaction wasn't in punishing her. It was in surviving her. I was standing tall when she expected me to fold, in walking through the wreckage without losing myself. So yeah, she got what she wanted, a new life. But not the one she expected. Because I got mine too. And I didn't have to lie, cheat, or steal to get it. I just had to wait for the truth to do its job. And it did.